So, greetings and welcome to today's educational program, The Power of Games to Unleash Collaboration and Creativity in Education by Zac Jarrard. This is being presented jointly by the ASQ Education Division and the ASQ Quality Management Divisions. This is your moderator, Doug Wood, with the ASQ's Quality Management Division. So, today we have the pleasure of hearing from Zac Jarrard. Please join me in welcoming him to our session. Zac Jarrard is the president of Jarrard Consulting, LLC. The company is dedicated to bringing out the best in people through team building activities, project management training, and workshops to improve intergenerational communication at work. Zac holds a Master of Science in Information Systems and Business Analytics, MPA and MBA from Park University. His research interests include gamification, project management, and working across different generations. Outside of his company, Zac is heavily involved in the community. He's a proud ASQ senior member who serves as the chair of the Kansas City ASQ section, and he will be presenting at World Conference in Quality and Improvement in Philadelphia 2023. Zac is an Eagle Scout who aspires to make the world a better place for everyone. So, without more talk, it's my pleasure to introduce Zac Jarrard. Zac, the screen is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the introduction. It's good to see everyone tonight. Hope that all of you are doing well. You're off to a great start this year. And let's have some fun together looking at using games in education and also the workplace. Our goals for this session, we'll take a look at games, just do a high-level overview and see how they can be applied in education and the workplace. We'll explore several games that can be used for education and training and also quality. And then I'll share some lessons that I've learned from using games in education and the workplace. So just to start off, games have been around throughout all of human history. If we go back to the prehistoric era, prehistoric humans would take bones of dinosaurs and they would stack them together and form the game that we know today as dominoes. During medieval times and in parts of India, kings and queens would play chess, and we still have chess today. And fast forward to modern times, games are everywhere. They're on your phone, perhaps a tablet. There's also board games. So post-pandemic, there's been a massive spike in board games, including a board game called Pandemic. And we have zombies. And so, you know, to step back from the history of games and look at games in general, there's 4 core parts that make up a game, and this comes from some of Jane McGonigal's work. The first part is a purpose. So having some kind of goal that you're pursuing, and it could be a very close-ended goal. So let's say you were playing one of the old Sonic the Hedgehog games. You know, you would take Sonic and you just get him through perhaps a mission or whatnot. Or you could have a game with a very open-ended goal. You know, one example being the Fallout series, where, you know, you're in a post-apocalyptic environment and you've got a main storyline, but then you have a lot of other options to pursue as well. The second part that makes up games is players. And so games wouldn't be what they are without people playing them. And it also includes how they interact. So it could be that you're playing a single player game, so it's just you perhaps, or it could be a multiplayer game. So you could be working in teams of 2, 4, 8 people, perhaps 64 people or more. And you could also have game objects that interact with you too. So AI within a game that perhaps help you, or maybe you fight against them in some way. The third part of a game is rules. So in life, there's a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability. Honestly, we don't know if the sun will come up tomorrow. We have an idea that it will, and I hope it will. But there's always a chance it might not happen. And within games, rules give us certainty and predictability. So for instance, if we're watching football, we know what it means to score a touchdown or perhaps a field goal. And so rules give the stability within games and help us understand what's acceptable and what's not, or game boundaries. And then we have game mechanics. So games wouldn't be what they are without the epic explosions, compelling experience, getting to go to different worlds within a place. That rounds out kind of the last aspect that makes up a game, and it provides the fun that we see within games today. You might wonder, why play games in the first place? And there's a couple reasons for it. One is that they're fun to play, so we enjoy doing it, perhaps playing Sudoku. I know my parents like to play word games, I think like Word Chums. Um, Games are also interactive, so you can interact with perhaps your coworkers, your students or classmates, perhaps colleagues that you've got. And then there's an element of choice. So we choose to play games voluntarily. We're generally not forced to play a game. And there's a lot of business, but also educational benefits from playing games. One is that we can improve engagement and retention, and especially student engagement and retention, which is so critical today as we look ahead for the future of higher education, but also for business too. Engaging our young folks is going to be critical. You can use games for team building, so helping associates get to know each other or perhaps a class, and also skill development. So developing a lot of skills in a short period of time. And then being that games get us out of our comfort zone, it can help us be innovative and come up with new ideas or be creative. So apply the concepts that we've learned in class in a fun simulation or perhaps a fun in-person activity. And so now we're all going to play a game together. And, to play this, I challenge all of you to think about an area that's gone well for your section or division that we could celebrate together. And feel free to post this in the chat. I'll leave this up for a few minutes. But to start this off, I would say some stuff that I would celebrate would be the members that we have in our section locally in Kansas City. We've done a lot of incredible stuff over the past couple of years, and I've had the privilege to get to help recognize them with ASQ testimonial awards. And so far, since I've been chair, we've given out about 4 or 5 of them. And I especially thought that was important because a lot of our volunteers stepped up, especially during the pandemic, to help keep our section going. And then I'm also proud to be with QMD. I had joined their Quality 4.0 working group, and we've got a page we put together, so that was something to celebrate. I would say personally, I'm working on writing a book, and so hopefully that'll be coming out this summer or fall. But I'd like to hear from all of you. What's some stuff that you'd like to celebrate that's gone well for your section, division, or perhaps you personally? So feel free to post in the chat, and then we'll go on ahead and share with everyone as a group.
Okay, so we've got a couple here. One individual said that their section has given out scholarships. They'd like to celebrate that. Uh, one person says reintroducing a suggestion program that engages all levels. That's a thing to celebrate. Avram says great team development. The London section has formed a strong relationship with local PMI and Apex chapters as well as the colleges. Being able to connect over webcasts and seminars is all good. Quality, says Orlando. Seeing the sections come back in person and meeting with more activities is a thing to celebrate. One personal item says that she went from QI in manufacturing to healthcare successfully. That's something to celebrate. Getting young people to learn new concepts is another item. Or, virtual meetings mixed with in-person meetings. Okay. And another one here from Sergi. Good sales, hired several good people. Marianne says, publishing the 3rd issue of the Education Division's Journal for Quality Perspectives. Ah, okay. Congratulations. Getting those journals out is a lot of work. Raul says, be back in an ASQ meeting after a while. And Pasante says, celebrate number of years in tenure for section members, 3, 5, 10 years, a certificate or a plaque given out to celebrate their tenure. These are all great ideas, don't you think?
No, I agree. And thank you everyone for jumping in. And, this just goes to show you the power of a game and especially celebration. I think sometimes we forget the importance of appreciation and recognition. And this is a small way to do that. And I try to do this with our local section once a month when we have board meetings. I always try to spend a few minutes asking them what stuff we could celebrate or that's gone well. So that way we can enjoy it and then recognize, that we did that together as a team. So thank you everyone for jumping in on this. Now that we've played a game, we'll go a little bit further into how you can use games in the workplace and start off with a basic framework for approaching that. And so the first part that you want to look at is the business case. And so when you're using games in the workplace or education, it's good to start off with defining a problem. So something that you're trying to solve. And Brian Berkey with Gardner, so he has a book called Gamify. And I'm happy to send you the link after this if you reach out to me if you're interested in that book. But he identifies 3 areas that games are really good at helping to solve or address in an organization. One is creating new behaviors or changing the way that people behave in an organization. 2 is skill development, so teaching people new skills or knowledge. And then the third one's innovation, so getting people out of their comfort zone to be creative and come up with new ideas. And another question to keep in mind as you're thinking about a problem you're trying to solve is, are games appropriate to solve it? So for instance, like if I'm trying to get someone to fill out a log for a purchase card, do I need to give them digital badges for that? Do they need to be getting chased by a dragon? Um, do I have to have all of you get chased by zombies to show up for this webinar? Probably not. And so those would be situations where games might not be appropriate. And as quality professionals, we have a whole bunch of tools we can use. So it's important to recognize that we can use other stuff as well if games aren't the right approach to solve that problem. And then another important point to think about is what resources are available. Um, and like if you look at some of these commercial games like the Call of Duty series or perhaps the Halo series, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on games. And the nice part about using games at work is that you don't have to have that much money. You could do games in person, have board games, use existing commercial games. And so it's important to think through what budgetary resources do we have, and then what personnel do we have? And do we have someone that can help facilitate that experience? And some additional points to think about as you're defining your problem and then thinking about your business case, believe it or not, and so this is going to sound really counterintuitive. Games are a serious tool to use at work. It's a very powerful way to motivate and engage people, but when most people think about games, they often think about using it in terms of like the how. Like we have to use a game to solve this, but oftentimes they forget about the why or the what they're trying to do, and they jump to the game. Like for instance, right now, like we could have a team building activity for an hour, and all of you could have a lot of fun, but not get any value out of this. And I'd probably be banned from doing a webinar like this again. Now, we're not going to do that, but that's just an example to show that games can be used in the wrong way if you don't start off with a proper business case. And then another point to think about is starting small. So instead of investing all this time and money into a game, test it out with a small group. So perhaps a group of students or your class, if you're in an educational setting. If you're in the workplace, test it out with a team at your work, and then scale over time. So let's say it works well in a class, share it with your other faculty or colleagues, and then maybe integrate into the department or their curriculum somehow, and then maybe try to scale it across the university. That way you're scaling your game, and then you're building in your lessons learned from your experience along the way. And that's important to understand the people that are playing the game. Oftentimes you might have different generations, and some of them are more tech savvy than others. But then you might also have different cultural or socioeconomic backgrounds. So it's important as we think about using games or creating a game experience that we make sure we're inclusive, that we don't create an experience where someone feels excluded or perhaps left out on accident. And so once we've fleshed out our problem we're trying to solve and our business case for using a game in education or the workplace, then we can flesh out our plan a little further. So we can think about how long will it take to set up, so the schedule for it. If you've got an in-person game, do you need to get a classroom for it? Do you need to get board games? Do you need to perhaps get like food or whatnot if it's in person? If you're virtual, you might need a server, so like a virtual space where you could meet. Perhaps you need game licenses if you're using a commercial game or if you're creating one. Um, and then people might have to have the computers to be able to use it. So making sure they have a computer that'll run the game appropriately. And then another point to think about with the plan is further clarifying the future state. So you've defined a problem in your business case. It's important to identify, once you have your game out there and people are playing it, what does success look like? Are we changing ABC behaviors? Are we developing 3 skills that we need urgently for our workplace or for our students to know for after they graduate? Or are we getting, let's say, like 5 new ideas that we could use for product development or student engagement with our student life organization? And then another point to think about is, how will you measure success? So will you have people take surveys? Will you look at how people are interacting in the game? So look on the back end. Will you have people demonstrate the skills that they've learned, or perhaps, the future state to validate that you've accomplished what you set out to do. And then you also want to further flesh out the game mechanics. And these are the tools for making a game fun and engaging. And again, it'll depend on your players. So making sure that you're inclusive of different generations or different cultural backgrounds, but then also motivation. We want to keep in mind that when people are playing a game, that they might come at it from different motivators. So you might have some people at work, they want to compete. So they want their department to win over another. You might have some people that just want to collaborate. So they want to build a city together with their group of students. Some people, and you might have done this before yourself, want to see if they can break a game. So if they can go to the outer edge of a game boundary and get out of it or whatnot, or discover a glitch. And believe it or not, another motivation I found most surprising is some people play games for revenge. So you have like a coworker or whatnot, you want to get back at them through a game. Now, I'm not advising that you play a game based on revenge, but some people might bring that motivation to that game experience. And some examples of game mechanics that are really powerful and effective, digital badges, perhaps having monsters, an open world where people can explore and do stuff. And you might wonder at this point, you might say, well, are these game mechanics really that powerful? And to give you a real life example, there is a company here locally, it was acquired by Oracle recently, and they were a global healthcare IT company. And they had a problem where their associates would not follow the company travel policy because people had rewards cards. They wanted to get their free hotel stay or airfare from the airline or hotel they used instead of the one the company wanted them to use. So they spent $10,000 on a pilot, and it was literally just a dashboard. You'd go in, you'd enter your travel information. If you complied with the policy, you got a digital badge, and I swear it looked like it was from Super Mario. It was just some big star. And so they spent $10,000 on developing this pilot. After 1 year of having it out there, it helped the company save over $2.1 million off their bottom line. And they saw compliance soar with their travel policy because people wanted that digital badge. And there's a lot of research out there to show that digital badges, but also physical badges or perhaps patches from scouting, that those can be extremely motivating as well for people. And so after you've developed your plan, you've further fleshed out your game mechanics, and you're ready to put your game out there, you can deploy it. And so as you put your game out there for people to play, and you have it out there for a couple weeks or a month or so, it's important to have your business case in mind. So to go back, and see, is the game solving the problem we identified? Are people's behavior starting to change? Are they developing the 3 to 5 skills we identified? Are we seeing them come up with new ideas that they didn't have before? And then you want to look at how people are playing it, because when we think about designing a game experience, we have an idea of how we think people will play it. But when it comes into action or reality, they might play it in a different way, or perhaps an unintended way, versus what we thought up front. And then you want to listen to the feedback people are providing. So what's stuff that they like about it? What do they not like? And then how could we improve it longer term? And you can use that feedback for continuous improvement. And then post deployment. So as you've had the game out there for a few months or perhaps a year, again, you want to go back to the business case. So is the game still solving some kind of problem that the organization has? Or is it solving new problems? So can you leverage it in other ways that you didn't originally intend? And then as you're getting even more feedback from people, you want to think, what are other mechanics or features we should add? So in phase 1 of this release, we're going to add A, B, C. And then in phase 2, we'll add D, E, F. So that way people keep playing, or we can use it to solve more problems. And then the last question to think about is, how will you monitor the game? And you want to keep in mind that it takes a team to do that. So if you've got a digital game, you'd want to have your IT or technology department involved, perhaps management support, maybe someone looking at the data. So if you're getting surveys or data on the back end to validate what people are doing, so perhaps a data scientist or someone reporting, and then a game facilitator. So all those pieces are there to help monitor and then sustain a game beyond when it's initially put out there. And so now that we've gone through a basic framework for using games in education at work, I'll talk about a few specific games. And so first we'll start off with team building games. And one of them that you could play in person, or especially it works well virtually, is Scavenger Hunt. And so with Scavenger Hunt, so like right now I've got my video on, you could have people turn their video on and find stuff within their house. And you might be surprised. I played this once with some associates, and I have my video on, and they saw a plant in the background. And they were like, well, what's that plant that you've got? And I told them that was from my grandmother, that she gave it to my mom when my mom was 6 years old. And she's had the plant ever since. It grew so big, we spread out across the house. But if we weren't playing Scavenger Hunt, or if I didn't have my video on, we would have never had that conversation. And it helped us get to know each other in a way that we normally wouldn't have in an office environment. Minefield's another game. You can play this in person or online. If you're playing this in person, get some rope, get a decent sized room in your office or perhaps your workplace, get some office supplies to treat as mines. You can use real mines if you want. You'll probably have to get a lot of waivers, and the mines might be really expensive. Again, not advising you do that, but just pointing it out. If you wanted to, you could. So anyway, so assuming we've got office supplies as our mines, you get your coworkers in teams of perhaps 3 to 5, have one person guide one of your coworkers through the minefield, and then each of your coworkers are blindfolded. And so as they're playing minefield, they're practicing communication, but then also building trust. And then a game show is another fun team building game. So playing Family Feud, Jeopardy, perhaps Deal or No Deal. Those are some fun game shows you can do. And you can tie it back to educational concepts. So having students practice what they learned in class in teams, and then perhaps a competition, so to see who could win. Now, there's a lot of benefits from playing these games for teams and especially student groups. One is they can be a great icebreaker. You can learn more about the students that you've got or your coworkers that you might not hear in a normal classroom setting or in your normal day-to-day interactions at work. Another benefit is that you can get your teams to the performing stage faster. So in the stages of team development, we've got forming, storming, norming, and performing. And with games, we can get from forming to performing a whole lot faster. And then you can build trust and credibility. You can know that if I've got your back in the minefield game, or if we're slaying a dragon together in a game, that I'll have your back in a class or even in the workplace. Now, there are also skill development games that are really useful, and I think especially in education. A couple of common ones. So telephone, this is one you could play in person or online. And it starts off, you've got a message that someone has and they share it with a person and then another person, and then it gets to the end. And usually what you find is that the message that someone had at the beginning is different than the one you hear from the end. And so you practice communication, listening skills. Another game is Plane Crash, and luckily from all my traveling, I haven't played this yet, but if I have to, I'll be ready. So you're on a plane and it crashes, and you've got to pick items to survive, and you've got like a list of 10 or 15 items, and so you have some items like a first aid kit, a flashlight, camping gear, but you also have some distractors like a television, a console, and so you've got to go through and prioritize those. And so playing Plane Crash, it helps you with creative thinking, but then also prioritization. So helping identify what's important or not to use. And then there's Minecraft, which is a game that I'll talk more about in the next couple slides, but it's a fun kids game, and it's basically Legos in a computer. So most of us grew up with blocks or Legos in person. Imagine those in a game that is massive, and you can pretty much do whatever you want. There's over 100 million people that play this game all over the world. And actually, when the pandemic happened, so this game was so popular that the country of Poland, they purchased a Minecraft server for all the kids in the country, so that way they could still play and interact with each other in a virtual space. So there's a lot of benefits for students and staff that play these skill development games. One is the development of transferable skills. So when we play games, we often put more effort into them than we realize, because we want that digital badge. We want to beat our teammates in some competition, or we want to work together to slay the dragon. And so from doing that, we develop a broad range of skills that can transfer to the workplace in a relatively short period of time. Another benefit is you can retain students and young employees. And so as we look at our generational makeup, millennials, Generation Z, and Generation Alpha, so basically everyone born from 1981 onwards, they have spent most of their lives playing digital games that are highly interactive. And so they appreciate seeing it in the workplace. And it doesn't mean you have to gamify everything. It wasn't like we joined this webinar and badges and lights went off. But using games in an intentional way. So for customer engagement, for rewarding retention or customer loyalty over a period of time, even for employee recruitment and training, younger people and students will appreciate that. And then you can develop future leaders. And so when you're playing in game environments, it's often a safe space where it's okay to fail. And you can give people leadership roles that don't normally have them in the workplace. And so they can practice being a leader in a safe space, and then afterward they can reflect on it. What did I do well? What did I not do well? What could I improve in the future? So that way, when they're being leaders in real life, they could be ready. And the military does this. They used to do training exercises a long time ago where they get all this gear out, all these people, they'd hope the weather was good. And if stuff went wrong, it would cost them a lot of time and money. And so locally, several years ago, I got to go to Fort Leavenworth to see the military simulations they have there. And the government spends over $80 million a year on simulations to train soldiers to have up to 85% or more of the skills they need to be combat ready. Because with doing simulations, you don't have to get all the equipment out, you don't have to worry about injuries nearly as much, and then you don't have to worry about the weather unless the technology is not working because of a tornado or something. But usually the odds of that are very low. And of course, I did not forget about everyone on this call. So we've got folks from the quality management division and also the education division. And I found some games that are specific to both that I thought all of you might be interested in. One of them is Quality Jeopardy. That's a great way to review basic quality topics, but also have fun, perhaps at a section or division meeting, doing a competition between teams. Drawing a pig. So with this one, you've got a picture of a pig, and I can send you the link if you want after the chat, and you have to draw it a certain way. And so you ask people to draw a pig and compare it to this, master or ideal picture of it. And so from doing that, people are practicing standard work. So they're looking to see, am I getting the same drawing as this ideal one, or am I getting close? Believe it or not, with Minecraft, so the company Pepsi, they use it for their Lean Six Sigma training. They bring a group of associates together, they build a factory, and then they apply quality management principles, but also Lean and Six Sigma to develop a optimal and efficient factory, and then apply some of those tools in a fun game. And they did this because during the early stages of the pandemic, all their in-person training was canceled, and most of them spent their whole day on Zoom. And so playing an interactive game was a way to combat Zoom fatigue. And then in terms of education, there's a whole bunch of games out there. So Kahoot, it's an interactive quiz tool that you can use in a whole bunch of different environments. And you can use it with a mobile device too, with a tablet or mobile phone. Credly is an organization that offers digital badges that you can post, and you can share those on social media. You can scale them, so you can issue a whole bunch of badges to students. So you create a master template instead of having to create individual physical badges. I know with some learning management systems like Canvas, there's also another digital badging company called Badger that integrates with Canvas. So again, I can send all of you the link if you want after this. And then the Marshmallow Challenge is another one. You get pieces of spaghetti and marshmallow and some basic office supplies, and you split people into teams of about 3 to 7 people, and you have them build the tallest tower possible with the spaghetti and marshmallows. And there's a whole video about it, but it's a great way to practice leadership and also creativity. And so now I'll take a second, I'll dive a little bit deeper into application of Minecraft. And so within my local area, I had a group of associates that during the pandemic, they hadn't really connected with each other. They'd all been working more than they had pre-COVID. And so they wanted to do a team building activity together. And so I offered to do one. And this is a pre-event picture. So as you can see within Minecraft, there's digital blocks all over the place. You've got cows, there's some pigs and sheep. And yes, in case you're wondering, if you look off to the right edge of the picture, there is a house there. So at my alma mater I went to, I helped create an innovative class where students would learn about different aspects of a city and then each week apply it in Minecraft. And one of the people that took that class was my mom, so someone that doesn't typically play video games or Minecraft. And she built this huge neighborhood in there based off of the Game of Thrones series. And so I told her, I said, I'm doing this activity. Just wanted you to know about it. So she wanted to come participate and see what her son was doing. And so I told her, I said, here's how you get in the server. And so I come in there to get this pre-event picture for groups like this. And she's built this giant house that I didn't know about. It had a whole bunch of cats that were all named Duke. She had a pet llama, a swimming pool, a basement, pictures everywhere. And so after she gave me a tour, she was like, isn't my house great? And I'm like, yes, it looks great, but we're gonna have to tear it down so that way I can have a clean pre-event picture. So imagine telling your mom they have to tear their house down. So after thinking about that a little bit, being her son, I told her, I said, okay, you can keep your house if you want. But after having some fun, doing some learning, and then working as a team, this was our key outcome from our activity. We were all able to build a city together within a relatively short period of time. And everyone got to build a whole bunch of unique stuff. So kind of going right to left, there was one person, they have a business at home, so they built a 2-story building so they could build their office they have at home. There's a bakery, a volunteer fire station. We had one person that was really passionate about trains, so they built a train station. We had a city hall. We didn't get to finish it because we all had to go do real adult stuff afterward, so we didn't get to finish that. We had a food pantry, a flower shop, and then we had some infrastructure to connect everyone together. And we had a lot of fun. And as a part of this, I helped the group build a demo house. So I helped them navigate the game mechanics. And there were a lot of skills that we developed in a short period of time. Communication, collaboration, creativity, analytical thinking. And then we all got to learn more about each other. And we discovered throughout the experience that all of us had traveled to cities from all over the world. And again, that's something that we wouldn't have known unless we had this activity. And it was a whole lot of fun, and everyone enjoyed it, and they wanted to do it again. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground tonight. We've looked at a basic framework for using games in education or the workplace. We've talked about some team building games, some skill development games, and then taken a little bit closer look at Minecraft, and then also looked at some quality management education games. And so now it's your turn. I would challenge all of you here to think about where you are today, perhaps in your organization, section or division, volunteer group, or other places that you're involved in, and think about a problem that you have. And think about if games could help solve that, and then how you would keep it going. And to give you an example, so I could get everyone thinking about this before we do it together. With our local section in Kansas City, throughout the first year of the COVID pandemic, we got switched to doing everything remotely. So we had people who, for months on end, or new section members, they didn't know each other as well as they did before, where we got to see each other in person. And so to end the year on a fun note, because the year 2020 had a whole lot of stuff going on, personally and professionally for a lot of people, we did basically a virtual holiday party. So we created a quiz that had quality questions in it, and people got points if they got the right answer. And then we did an ugly sweater contest. So I found some picture of R2D2 and then this ugly sweater I had, and got a picture of that. And we did some giveaways. So if someone got the most points on the quiz, they got a prize. For everyone that participated, whether they won or not, they got a small gift card or prize. And then the person that got the voted as the ugliest Christmas sweater, they got a prize too. And so from doing that activity, we helped solve the problem of member engagement. And then we looked at doing it again in the future, at future holidays or whatnot. And so I'd encourage all of you, let's go on ahead and take a minute, and I challenge you to think about some problems that you have, perhaps at your workplace or educational institution or other places you volunteer at. So feel free to put those in the chat. Some common problems I see within the education world. Student retention is definitely one. Engaging students in a classroom. Trying to make sure that everyone can get to know each other. So faculty and staff, perhaps alumni, or your undergrad and graduate students or doctoral students. In terms of the workplace, I'd say the big challenge I see today is remote teams. So if you have people that aren't together in a physical location, how do they still have a sense of team cohesion or a shared sense of purpose or connection? Because oftentimes if you work at home, the connection is different than it is in person. And then doing the skill development too. But go on ahead and take a minute. I'd love to hear if there's other problems out there. And if you don't have problems, I'd be shocked, because every day I work with people to help solve their problems. So Doug, are we getting any responses in the chat in terms of problems that people are trying to solve?
Yes, we are. We've got quite a few coming in here. Having a little hard to keep up with it. Trying to capture them. Trying to capture them so I can assemble them and combine some of them. One of them was to change mindsets. Okay. Another one said ESD compliance on the shop floor. Okay. Another problem that was brought up was the person brought two board games to work, Happy Salmon and Taboo, and this was to strengthen the relationship between all employees across production, QA, warehouse, and office. This even got the very quiet people to engage, and they were louder by the end. Well, there's a success. Um, Creating an agenda for a QI committee of the board of directors that is engaging and not just reporting data. So that's another challenge. Um, in the Q&A, we've got a few great way to promote participation in meetings where there's not much input from some team members. One here says, asks about using Minecraft with students in a classroom, fees or licensing issues. That's one of the questions we might be able to get to at the end. Um,
Okay, that's great.
Wow,
Yeah.
they're just things just pouring in here. Pulling people into a meeting that's online, much easier to discuss at a round table. Trying to overcome the inertia that besets PhD students at the dissertation stage that impacts retention. Yeah, we all know when you get to that dissertation, PhD students oftentimes get stuck. Building robots with Legos to show standard work, or making dry material more engaging, combating, we've always done it this way from leadership, um, linking training requirements to tasks, digital badges, or things like that.
Wow. Well, this is incredible, and thank you, everyone. So, now that we've talked about some problems that we're facing, I would challenge all of you to think about what are some game mechanics that you could use to help address those, and then how could you keep that going? So let's say you had those game mechanics out there, how could you sustain that longer term? Um, to give another example, so that way everyone can have a minute to write in the chat. One problem that we face across the world is engaging our younger generations in the community and especially getting their input on public or outdoor spaces. And so Mojang, so they're the company that's the developer for Minecraft, and Microsoft partnered to create what's called the Block by Block Foundation. And this is a nonprofit. They work with the UN Habitat, and they provide workshops where they empower kids through Minecraft to reimagine outdoor spaces from all over the world. And these projects have happened everywhere. They've happened in Mumbai, India, Kosovo, Johannesburg, South Africa, and I actually got to see one of these in Anaheim. This was a project that was done in 2017, and they would bring kids in. They would play Minecraft and help design these spaces, and then based off of the design that the kids had developed, the city would actually build it, modeled off of the kids' design. And so Doug and I, we both got to go, and a few other QMD members to go see this park in Anaheim, and I was so excited. I'd waited almost 3 years to see it, and you could tell it was designed by a kid. There were fossils that kids could find throughout it. They had a zip line for little kids. They had a playground that was set up like a tree house, and the kids still played on it to that day, and it had been there for a couple of years. So that's another example. But Doug, did we have any additional comments in the chat about game mechanics or keeping games going?
Not specifically. There's a few comments here about Xavier mentioned, is there a platform I can use for this? Oh, here's one from Brenda, a TED Talk. Okay, golden circle regarding identifying the what, the how, and the why. Um, she'd like to have a board QI committee help her to answer those questions. Here's I'm not sure what the golden circle is, but that sounds like a mechanic. Um, Creating a team game when you have to build an object based only on passing from one team to the other. There can be different roles and different limitations. Then you debrief and you change roles. Uh,
And,
oh, here's a good one. Don't say names. Right, that's
huh,
a mechanic. Right. Uh,
wow.
it could be very challenging. Uh, you know, so yeah, there's There's quite a few things here, you know.
Cool. Well, thank you. And again, I appreciate that everyone's jumped in on this. We've had great participation so far. So thank you all for that. Some additional questions, and again, we're not going to go through all this tonight, or we could be here all night, to think about with your game experience or the problem you're trying to solve. One to keep in mind is how will you motivate people to play the game that you looked at. So kind of what's in it for them? Do they get a digital badge? Do they get like entered in for a raffle to get a prize? Do they get money or whatnot? And you want to bear in mind that there's internal and external motivation as well. So some people, they want to do stuff just because they have an inner feeling they'll get of satisfaction, but some people want that external reward. They want that digital badge. They want to see on a leaderboard that they're first place or whatnot. So as you're designing game experiences, you want to build in both motivation factors so that way you'll connect with both types with people that are playing it. And then another critical question, what do people need to know to play your game? So are there controls for it? Are there rules? Are there ways people need to act? That's important. The cost for a game. So if you need to buy board games or office supplies, perhaps rent a space or, reserve a space in a college or your workplace. If it's a digital game, getting game licenses, perhaps a server space. So those are kind of some other key questions to think about. And so, looking back from my experience using games in education in the workplace, I always start with going back to the business case. It's important to understand the why for using games and, having that business case fleshed out, because if it's not clear, again, like we could all have a lot of fun and play games right now, but we might not achieve the goal that we were looking for from using games in the first place. And then we want to recognize that games are a serious and intentional tool, and they might not solve all of our problems, and that's okay, because we have other tools we can use as well to solve other problems. And then to recognize that starting small is great. So running a pilot program with perhaps a group of students or your team at work, and then growing it over time and building on your success, and then using the lessons you learn to continuously improve the experience as you go. And then for keeping games going longer term, it's important to listen to the players and the feedback they're providing. Is there stuff that's not going well? What's going well? And then how do we improve it continuously or longer term? That'll help people continue to play your game beyond when it's initially put out there. And then we want to keep in mind that it takes a team to keep a game going. So if you've got a digital game, your technology team, definitely management support, your players, you'll want to have their support in using the game, but then also a game facilitator. And again, so thinking through generations. So today, for instance, a lot of us have developed expertise in quality or the given areas we work at. And believe it or not, our kids are becoming experts at some of these games. And you might have seen this. They're spending time playing Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox. And so as we look at our K-12, college, or even young professionals, we've got to recognize that we might have game experts among them. And so you can leverage them to help deliver this game experience and possibly help facilitate it too. And then we want to keep in mind that what makes games unique today in gamification is the fact that games can be digital. And so that makes them much more scalable. So for instance, let's say we were all in a room and we were playing a game together. Only the people in our room would get the benefit from it. But if we turn that into a digital game or provide a template to use it beyond our physical space, we could scale the benefits. We could get a much broader benefit in terms of behavioral change, skill development, or innovation and getting new ideas from people. And so some additional resources to look at beyond this talk, if you thought this was interesting. So Brian Berkey has this book called Gamify. He's got a lot of examples of using games within business, nonprofits, and government. Jane McGonigal, who I had talked about at the beginning, she has a book called Reality is Broken, provides an interesting perspective on games and society. I have this article I wrote that elaborates further on the team building activity I talked about. I'm happy to send that to anyone after this talk. And then some web resources that be helpful. Believe it or not, with Minecraft, there's a whole subset of the game called the Education Edition. And there are K-12 and college professors from all over the world that develop lesson plans and templates for this version of Minecraft. So I'd highly recommend that to everyone. I'd love to see at some point if we could get quality added as a subgrouping of lessons. Because I think that learning about quality at a young age, that helps us get people into this profession, and especially looking at the future. We're looking at generations being smaller than they are today. So any stuff we can do to get people introduced to this stuff early is great. If you like going to conferences or activities or whatnot, there's the Serious Play Conference. It's a conference that's all about games and how they're being used in instructional design, government, business, pretty much you name it, it's probably there. And it's usually in the summer. And then there's this article by Huang and Soman that I'd used in a book chapter I co-authored. Has some great stuff about gamification and education and training. So again, happy to share that. Just feel free to reach out to me after this talk. And here are some takeaways we had from our session today. So hopefully by the end of this session, you've had a better idea of how games could be used in education and also the workplace. You'll have learned about several games that you could use for team building, skill development, or learning quality management and education skills. And then reflected on some lessons learned that perhaps you've had or that I've shared from using games in education in the workplace. And here's my contact information. So I'll leave this up for a minute. I'm really active on LinkedIn. I try to do what I can to support other ASQ sections or divisions or events going on. There's my email, my website. And so I'd love to connect, see if there's ways that perhaps using games could help solve some of the problems that all of you have talked about tonight. And I do want to take a second and thank the Quality Management Division for this opportunity and the Education Division. It's been a lot of fun getting to see all of you tonight. Hope you're all doing well. And I'm also a part of the Kansas City section, so we're always open to collaborate with people if you'd like to do a joint event or whatnot. And then, as Doug had mentioned, I'll be going to the World Conference in May. Doug and I will actually be presenting a workshop together on working across different generations. So if you'd like to meet us in person, we'd love to see you there. And I think with that being said, I think we have some time for questions. But thank you again for everyone for hanging in there throughout this.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. We do have some questions. They've been piling in here all the way through. Um, I've been encouraging everybody, if you have questions we don't get to, you should email Zach. I put his email address in the chat window. You can copy and paste it out of there. You'll also get an email 48 hours after the talk with his email address in there. So here's a couple questions. Manny says, a quick search didn't see any links for using Minecraft for adult learning or developing processes. Do you have any keywords to search for? Can somebody program a plant layout and have workstations with rules? Well, I answered that last one with yes. But what keywords would you use to search for this?
Well, I would use Minecraft Lean Six Sigma, Minecraft project management. If you want to email me, I'm happy to send you some because I've spent several years researching this. I'd be more than happy to send them to you if you want.
Okay, very good. Um, Orlando mentions how we've got great tips here to deal with Gen X, Y, Z, and Alpha. But I want to remind you guys that some of us oldsters like games too. So Here's one. Do any of the sources you have simple games that can be played with like whiteboards or paper, pens, and sticky notes and things like that?
I definitely think so. And like for the game that we had played together, celebrating success, we didn't have to have anything. I didn't have to have a whiteboard or, a specific software to download. I would say Kahoot in some ways is similar to that too. You go in, you set up a quiz, you create a QR code, and then people scan it. So there are definitely a lot of games out there that can be set up with relatively little setup time. Again, I'm happy to send you some links for that. And I did make a document in the member leader page. It's got 3 pages worth of games for sections and divisions to use.
Okay, so if anybody wants links like that, you should send the email to Zach and he will reply. Um, so here's one I'm kind of interested in. How would we integrate games as a problem-solving tool in our very fast-paced environment when we're a small, privately owned company where every minute and every dollar counts? We have to be able to solve problems on the fly. Can you think of a problem-solving game of some kind?
Hmm, that's a good question. I definitely think uh, Minecraft could be one. So perhaps setting it up where maybe all of you design a house together, or perhaps like a small part of a city, or find a way to survive within that. But I would say try to find a way to carve out a little bit of time. Um, if you're looking at a longer activity, maybe like a half day or so. But I'm sure there's ways to maybe do a game for like 30 minutes to an hour over a longer period. Again, if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to talk with you more about that beyond this.
Okay, great. Um, So Jill says an alternative to the draw a pig standard work is to cut out a snowflake. Tell people to cut out a snowflake. Helps people understand the importance of communication. That's just a comment, I think. Here's one. Is there an age range for digital badges? Some ages that respond more strongly to digital badges.
That's a good question. I would say definitely for the younger generations, I think that they're more used to getting digital badges in some of these game environments. But I also think for older generations, it could be a motivator too. And even if you look at ASQ, a couple of years ago, they started doing digital badges for their certifications. And I'm also in PMI, so I got some badges issued from Credly, and another benefit you get from using those is they can help promote what you're doing. So people could share it on social media. Hey, I got certified in this. And so not only do you celebrate, but also helps promote your organization or nonprofit that you're in.
Okay, thank you. Here's one from thank you, Orlando. How can I use the gamification to combat the immune system in the organization and change mindsets of people? Now, that's a challenge. Immune system would be the company or the organization is reluctant to change. It fights change. How do you think that would? How could you work on that?
That's a really good question. I would say start small. So see if you could get perhaps a team of people together, have them do a game or activity together, document it. So what went well, what didn't go well, and then gradually scale that over time. And we want to recognize it takes time to change our organizations or the way people operate. And looking into the future, our change cycles are going to accelerate, and so we're going to have to be able to develop those skills quickly and learn how to work together. And plus, we've lived through this great resignation, so we're seeing huge turnover. So it's going to be critical to invest in our team building stuff. But that's why I'd suggest start small and scale it over time.
Yeah, I think if I could tag on to that, I I think that when you're dealing with an organization that doesn't want to change, sometimes you have to get them outside their normal mindset. And this is one way that a game can take them outside their normal mindset and then but you have to tie it back again, don't you? When you're done with the game, you have to have some kind of a debriefing where people talk about how different was this game compared to our daily environment. Something like that, I think, would be necessary. Okay. A couple more questions. CB says, can you suggest games that I could use to describe problem-solving methods in physical reality rather than online?
Problem solving methods. What would I say? Um, Send me an email and I'll follow up. I don't have any off the top of my head. Perhaps like a board game. Maybe like doing chess might be good. Um, what else?
Yeah, yeah, that
That's
would be
probably all that I have off the top of my head.
okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for their very perceptive questions and their comments. This has been marvelous, Zach. Thank you for doing this talk for us. Um, I think we're going to have to close the recording here. We'll say goodbye for the recording, but we're going to close out the talk and do a couple more slides here.